I'm loving Bungou Stray Dogs' debut, and it's great to see Soul Eater and On High School Host Club director Takuya Igarashi at work once again. As an associate of Kunihiko Ikehara, they embrace a similar style, although Igarashi definitely stands out as someone on the more comedic side of the spectrum, and Bungou Stray Dogs shows this off exceptionally. Although in a way it is one of those shows that can feel a bit exclusive. With every character being based on a figure within classical fiction, it can be difficult to keep up. So I set out to discover everything about the main cast and what aspects of their real life counterparts they may be based on. I also really wanted an excuse to use Takuya Iwasaki music, so this is it. Atsushi Nakajima was a wartime author and someone who, like many authors at the time, were fairly restricted in what they could publish and pressured into writing imperialist propaganda. Yet his experiences living in Japanese-occupied Korea disillusioned him towards the occupationist view at the time, expressing disdain for the Japanese colonists there. This was Japan during its "we're very angry and we own everything" phase, and Nakajima wasn't a fan. However, Nakajima wasn't actively anti-imperialist. His biographer describes that he just wasn't interested in politics at all. He just respected China and Korea due to his experiences in study. Rather, Nakajima was far more interested in the bigger questions, like what is the meaning of life, who am I, and why did they discontinue Crispy Mint M&Ms? They were great. It was these existential ideas, or maybe not that last one, that contributed to his story Sangatsuki, in which the main character suffers an obsession with the metaphysical that leads him to lose touch with reality and transforms him into a tiger. And there we go, that transformation in Nakajima's book is the key connection that we know of so far. In the end, the resolution is that the tiger self-reflects, realises the pain he's put his family through, and regrets leaving his job as a local official, which I imagine was something added to please the Imperials. We don't know much about his Bungou Stray Dogs equivalent, and the real-life Nakajima wasn't an orphan, but the reasoning behind his tiger transformation and how he deals with it is something that we should keep an eye on. This isn't actually Dazai's first step into the world of anime. His book, No Longer Human, was actually adapted into 4 episodes of Aoi Bungaku, or Aoi Bung, however you pronounce this, so if you want to learn more, that's where to head. Dazai is what is referred to as a post-war author, someone who flourished with the freedom that came after the war, and many of his most popular works were published during this time. But despite that, Dazai had a really shit life. Brought up wealthy, his mother was chronically ill and his father was always absent. He spent most of his money those days on alcohol and prostitutes, and continuously attempted suicide. Suffice it to say, his anime counterpart is far more cheery than the actual person. No Longer Human, which is also the name of that anime ability, is a story following a troubled man who suffers from various psychological issues, believed by many to be very autobiographical. In the end, Dazai succeeded in committing suicide by drowning, a means of death they'd been attempting for years, and if you remember, that's exactly his introduction in Bungou Stray Dogs. Oh, and it was true that he wasn't into dudes. He had a wife. They committed suicide together. It's quite dark. If you've been following this channel for a while, you'll remember that I've actually already covered Edogawa Rampo before in regards to Rampo Katan Game of Laplace. I'll leave a link at the end of this video, but I'll tell the abridged version. Rampo is one of the most prominent figures amongst Japanese mystery fiction. His pen name being based on Edgar Allan Poe, he's a man who was heavily inspired by Western fiction, particularly Sherlock Holmes. His most famous character, a detective named Kogoro Akechi, was practically a mirror image of Holmes, which explains Rampo's Sherlock outfit in Stray Dogs. But near the start of World War II, he started getting into an absurd genre known as eroguro. This was the study of the erotic, the grotesque and the absurd. One such story, The Caterpillar, features a war veteran who lost all of his limbs, but despite how cruel and mutilated he may be, his wife has to care for and even have sex with him. She eventually, out of impulse, sticks her fingers into his eyes, violently blinding him. Then, later on, he drowns himself in a well. So, yeah, I think the Bungou Stray Dogs version is more based on his more vanilla stuff. His character is an amalgamation of Kogoro Akechi and Kobayashi Yoshio, the leader of the Boys Detective Club. So you can expect eccentricity, incredible detective skills, a bit of narcissism, and maybe even a bit of cross-dressing. Kenji is perhaps the easiest character to connect to his real-life counterpart. His power, undefeated by the rain, is a reference to his poem of the same name and gives him superhuman strength. It's not overly deep, but rather a poem about working together on a farm and overcoming hardship, which makes sense because Miyazawa Kenji was a farmer. As someone who lived in the city, he gained a huge interest in agriculture, becoming a teacher and eventually leaving the city to become a farmer himself. He was regarded as eccentric and hands-on. He wrote multiple children's books and poems, most famously Night on the Galactic Railroad. So we can obviously see that the farmer's outfit is a reference to Miyazawa's obsession and profession with agriculture, and it would be easy to say that the character's childish demeanour comes from the fact that he wrote children's books. Although, there might actually be more to it than that. I mentioned that Miyazawa became a farmer, but he was still fairly secure as he was receiving money from his father whilst in his 30s. And not only that, but he never married and he died a virgin at 37. So, yeah, that was Kenji. So, whilst Miyazawa followed his dreams and died young, Doppo's dream made him bankrupt and he also died young. Yeah, history rarely has a happy ending. Coming from a samurai background, he was kicked out of university at 20 for his increasingly defiant Western views, christened at 21 and started his own magazine at 22, going on to work various writing jobs that paid really badly. So much so that his wife's mother said she'd rather see her commit suicide than marry him, and 5 months later she agreed and divorced him. Doppo being a stickler for money in the first episode is probably a reference to this, and his entire life was struck with bankruptcy. After the divorce, he started writing romantic poetry, but soon after turned to naturalism, which, for the record, is really boring, and most likely inspired his Bungou Stray Dogs equivalent's personality. People hated Yosano, and she's perhaps one of the most revolutionary Japanese female writers. As an early feminist and anti-war icon, she wasn't one for subtle protest. She started her writing career with a volume of tanka, a 57577 genre of Japanese poetry called Tangled Hair, all about expressive femininity, sexuality and being assertive, and the critics hated it. This was 1901, and these sorts of messages coming from a female writer were certainly unconventional. But her most famous moment was when she wrote Thou Shalt Not Die, the very poem that her ability is named after in Bungou Stray Dogs. As a response to the Russo-Japanese War of 1904, Thou Shalt Not Die heavily criticizes conscription, even going so far as to blame the Emperor. She was a badass, and hopefully her anime counterpart will sum that up. The leader of the armed detective company in Bungou Stray Dogs, and one of the leaders of the Japanese civil rights movement in real life. Fukuzawa is a huge figure in modern Japanese history, and he paved the way for many of the other progressive writers within this show. His ability in Stray Dogs, All Men Are Equal, is a reference to a quote from his book, An Encouragement of Learning. In it he states, "It is said that heaven did not put men above men, nor put men below men. Therefore, heaven's aim is that all men are equal at birth." Fukuzawa's outfit in the anime is indicative of the fact that he was one of the earliest writers within Bungou Stray Dogs, as well as his samurai upbringing. He's a serious character, but also caring and considerate rather than Doppo's more angry demeanour. And finally, Junichiro Tanizaki was very modern for his time, and you can see that in his outfit in the anime. As a writer, much of Tanizaki's works are regarded for their cultural context of what was quickly becoming modern Japan. Post-war made him absolutely famous, and he became a huge figure for contemporary writing. His first novel, Naomi, is about a Japanese man with a fascination for the West and the modern. He ends up being overwhelmed by a girl called Naomi who overpowers him with that Western ideal of independence. And that's what post-war Japan was all about. It was an evolution in culture, a fascination with the American way, and a huge step for Japanese feminism. Naomi is even realised in Bungou Stray Dogs as Junichiro's sister, and as you can see, she's quite overpowering. Expect Junichiro to be the trendiest member of the team. His ability, Light Snow, is based on his book of the same name about suburban lifestyle during World War II. And that is the Armed Detectives Agency. There's many other literary figures amongst the show, even including Western figures such as Agatha Christie and Mark Twain, but you'll be meeting them later. Thanks for watching The Canipa Effect. Bungou Stray Dogs is available to watch on Crunchyroll, and you totally should. It's super cool.